Children, I must say we all are fortunate of having good parents who always tries their best to give us a comfortable life, good education, different kinds of toys, and sometimes a tour to different places during vacation. Well, all are not fortunate as we are. There are many children who lost their parents at a very young age and leading a life in an orphanage. Today, we will read about the suffering of those who are not as fortunate as us. Let us move ahead with our topic Oliver Goes to London. This story is written by Charles Dickens, was born in London. His stories and novels describe life in Victorian England, especially the conditions of the poor. And Oliver Goes to London is a passage from his famous novel Oliver Twist. Oliver is a 9-year-old orphan who lives in a badly run orphanage. Unable to bear the ill treatment and cruelty there, one day he decides to run away. Here you will know what type of situation he has faced after coming out of the orphanage, some of his good and bad experiences. Oliver, an orphan since birth, spent much of his childhood at an orphanage with too many children and too little food. After suffering repeated mistreatment, Oliver ran away and headed for London. He had one good friend named Dick in the orphanage, to whom he said goodbye and started to seek his fortune out of the orphanage. Oliver walked onto the high road. On that night, around 8 o'clock, he sat down on a milestone and began to think for the first time where he had better go and try to leave. He thought of going to London, which was just 70 miles from the orphanage, and thought that no one hopefully find him there. And he decided to walk to London. On the first day of his journey, he walked 20 miles. As he had no money with him, he decided to walk. He ate nothing except a crust of dry bread. He spent that night under a haystack in a meadow. And on the seventh day of his journey, he reached in a small town of Barnet. His feet were bleeding and he was almost covered with dust. There he met one of the curious looking boys he had ever seen. He was short, with bow legs and little sharp ugly eyes. He helped him by giving him some food, and he also took Oliver to a pub where he had a hearty meal. During the time of conversation, Jack collected all the information about Oliver. After spending some time with that strange looking boy, Oliver came to know his name was Jack Hawkins, though all his friends called him the Artful Dodger. Children, artful means very cunning, and dodger means someone who uses dishonest methods to avoid difficult situations. And why Jack Hawkins was called by this name? Because he was an expert pickpocket. Oliver had no idea that he was going to be trapped, as he did not know much about Jack and all about his activities. Only he knew that he was from London and helped him a lot. Then both headed towards London, and before it was dark, they reached London. But Jack Hawkins refused to enter London before complete dark, as there is a chance of being caught by the police. So they entered the city late night. Jack Hawkins has other friends who were also pickpockets, and they all wanted Oliver to get into their gang. When Oliver suspected something wrong is going to happen, he wanted to run away from that place, but Jack caught him by his arm and pushed him inside a dark passage and laid Oliver up some dark and broken stairs. There he met an old shriveled man with a horrible face, who gladly took Oliver in. He offered him food and shelter. This man has taken all these boys in order to train them to steal and pickpockets for him and his brutal thieving partner. So, children, throughout his journey from the orphanage to London, Oliver had undergone various situations. He met different people and learnt many things. So, children, from this story, we have learned that everyone who helps us may not be your friend,